is in love with herself. Grey Wolf Studios.
What's up, guys? It's me, Grey Wolf. I'm back to do another video for you. This is video number 2 in my video series that covers the various aspects of electric RCs for the beginners. Maybe a little bit of intermediate stuff thrown in here and there, but mostly geared for beginners. I'm by no means an expert. Let's just get that out of the way right now. I'm doing this because I know a little more than your typical beginner. I know a lot more than your typical beginner. I know a little bit more than your typical intermediate person. So I'm going to try to share my knowledge here. Everything that I'm going to throw out here is correct to the best of my knowledge. But that being said, I'm no expert. So if you happen to find any mistakes along the way, feel free to shoot me an email or get a hold of me on my Facebook so I can get those mistakes corrected. But that being said, this this video is about motors, and this is video number 2 in the series. And as you can see here, we have 3 motors sitting here, and I'll zoom in real quick so you can see these guys. This is what's called a 540 can motor for 10th scale vehicles. This is what's called a 550 can motor for 10th scale vehicles. And this is a 1/8 scale vehicle motor. And this also actually has a can size, but I don't know it right off the top of my head. And I'll tell you why later. So let's just, since I already threw it out there, let's just get into this thing with by talking about can sizes. Now, technically, every class or scale, if you will, of RC out there, 5th scale, 8th scale, 10th scale, 12th scale, 14th scale, 16th scale, 18th scale, and 1/32nd scale. Those are all of the main classes out there. Now, the 12th scale, the 12th scale, the 14th scale, the 16th scale, and the 18th scale, those are basically all what you call mini RCs. Let me zoom out here a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here. Mini, quote unquote, RCs. Mini RCs, there's really no standard size for a mini RC, so it can fall anywhere in between 1/12 and 1/18 scale. Generally, once you get past 1/18 scale, you jump down to around, I know like Losi, for example, they're micro scale vehicles, or 1/32nd scale. There's some other variances, but they're around 1/32nd scale. Don't really do micros and minis. I've had one of each before. Don't really like them. I prefer the bigger 1/10 and 1/8 scale. I would probably like 1/5 scale vehicles, but I have size limitations for my hobby room and size limitations on where I bash. So 5th scale doesn't really fit me, even though I would probably like it. So I stick to 1/10 scale and 1/8 scale motors. And getting back to can size, a 540 can and a 550 can motor are both for 1/10 scale vehicles. The only difference, all 540 and all 550 can motors have the same diameter. The diameter of the can going across is 36 millimeters. That's one trait of all 1/10 scale motors. They're all 36 millimeters wide. The can size has to do with how long the can is, but it's not like a direct correlation of measurement or anything. A 540 size can does not mean it's 54 millimeters long or anything like that. Although this particular one's close. This one's 52.5 millimeters long. But it's not a direct correlation. I don't really know where the can sizes come from, to be honest. I tried to do a little bit of research. It's never something that I've ever questioned before. It's not something you need to know. I tried it. I did do a quick search for some information on the origin of can sizes. Didn't really come up with anything, so I apologize. I don't know where these sizes came from. I do know that virtually all the different motors have their own can size. You know, each scale has their own can size. Um, but there's really only two of them that are talked about. Um, well, there's three of them that are talked about. The two main ones are 540 and 550, and we'll deal with those two first. Now, a 540 is your standard 1/10 scale can. Um, the 550s came out. As you can tell, the 550s are quite a bit longer. Let me zoom in here so you can see this. As you can tell, the 550s are quite a bit longer than the 540s. And the 550s came about, from my understanding, because of four-wheel drive short course trucks. Four-wheel drive short course trucks needed some extra torque to get around to get around the track better. So they came out with these 550 can size motors, which basically still has the same dimensions, so it fits the 1/10 scale mounts, but it's longer. Therefore, you got more motor. You got your stators are longer, your magnets are longer, you know, all that good stuff. So the motor can actually generate more torque than a 540, an equal spec 540. Um, so that's generally the two big talked about ones is 540 can versus 550 can. Now you will hear 380 can size thrown out there, and 380 is it's more for like your 1/12th and maybe 1/14th scale RCs. It's more of a mini scale motor. But what happens is, and the reason you hear people refer to the 380 is because one of the things that the manufacturers like to do is, or at least the budget manufacturers like to do, is they like to take a 540 can and they like to stick a 380 size motor inside of it, and then sell it as a 1/10 scale motor. Now, will it work? Sure, it'll work. A 380 will push most of your average and lighter sized 1/10 scale vehicles without too much problem. However, it's not going to push it nearly as efficiently as an actual full 540 size motor. Now, I wish I had one to show you. Unfortunately, I don't buy them, so I don't really have one to show you. But you can basically identify a 380 size motor that's been stuffed into a 540 can, because if you look at all three of these motors here, you can see they all have small little ridges in there. All three of these have small ridges across the cans, and I'm assuming that's for cooling purposes. I'm assuming that somehow helps it cool. I don't really know why they're like that, but virtually most of the motors that I've had have these little ridges. Not all of them. I actually have had a couple. I've seen a couple of smooth can motors, but at any rate, the ones that I'm talking about, they're 540s with the 380 motor stuck inside of them. You can tell because they'll have these really deep ridges in between the aluminum fins. So you can tell that the can size itself might still be, the 540 size can, but if you take away the fin space, you can tell that the motor inside of it is only, is a much smaller motor than a 540. It's in fact a 380. So you may hear 380 thrown around once in a while. You'll mostly hear about can size in the 540s and the 550s. Now, technically, all of them have can sizes. You know, eighth scales have can sizes. I don't actually know what most of them are outside of the 380s, the 540s, and the 550s because those are the only three that are really used very much. I do remember seeing a chart at one time out on the internet somewhere that listed like all this, you know, the actual can sizes for all the different scales and all that stuff. But almost nobody uses can size in reference to anything but 1/10 scale motors, with the, like I said, with the occasional exception of the 380, which is technically for a smaller motor or for a smaller scale. So that's a little bit about can size.